Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we're here to discuss the second round of the X2O Trophy, which took place in Kortrijk. The urban cross there, always a special one on the calendar, not the scenery you see every day. With me here to discuss that is Issam.
Yes, thank you for having me.
We'll start off by talking about the men's race. In the men's race, Lars van der Haar had the fastest start, but Issam quickly took the initiative. For the first time in a couple of weeks, we could see that Issam was having significant improvements to his injury, his back injury, which has been lingering for the past couple of weeks, ever since the European Championships. So, Issam, signs were promising. Tom Pidcock kind of missed his start. It wasn't terrible, it was around 10th, but he quickly moved up into 5th. Van Toerenhout closed the gap to the leaders for Pidcock, so we had 5 leaders. The Paul Sauze duo of Van Toerenhout and Issam, Trek Balois duo of Van der Haar and Thibaut Nys, and Tom Pidcock from the Ineos Grenadiers. At the end of the first lap, Issam took 15 bonification seconds towards the overall, Lars van der Haar took 10. These riders were equal in time before the race started, so they are locked in a very close battle for the overall. The battle for the victory was not that close. In the second lap, Tom Pidcock attacked. He opened the gap of 10 seconds on Van der Haar, who could not immediately respond. And the gap, well, it was around 10 seconds for almost the entire race. The entire race we were thinking, oh, Pidcock one mistake and Van der Haar is back. But Pidcock didn't make any mistakes. He took a gel. The gap at some point came down to 7 seconds. And that was the moment we were thinking, oh, yeah, now is the moment. Van der Haar, keep pushing, you come back. Pidcock put the hammer down. Gap went up to 12 seconds. And as soon as Issam had caught Lars van der Haar in the battle for second, these two started looking at each other for the overall. Pidcock extended his gap to 15 seconds and then took it easy in the rest of the final lap. Tom Pidcock took his first win of the season here in Kortrijk. Behind, it was still a pretty close battle. Issam and Van der Haar, who had come together, were swapping positions. Both went in for bike changes, and Van der Haar still made a very late swap in the final lap. He went for a Reno profile. That eventually turned out to be a very good move. First, Issam had a bit of a gap, but Van der Haar was able to close it, and then he said himself that due to the tire thread he was able to outsprint Issam. Van der Haar second, his 15th podium of the season, ahead of Issam, who took third. I think I need to start by apologizing, or, well, retaking or taking back my words that I had in the preview podcast for Hulst. I did not have the full confidence that Tom Pidcock would already be this good this week. I thought he would still be a bit too rusty in the corners, but I was completely wrong. Here today, Tom Pidcock was on fire. He looked to be in control the entire race, had the perfect balance of his form. He had the power on the bridges and the straights. He was alright in the dismounts. He was alright through the corners. Pretty much the perfect race by him.
Yeah, he was in complete and total control. I mean, the way he was riding today was truly class, and yeah, there was just a difference between him and the guys behind him. I think that the difference was not enormous, but it was definitely there. On a course like this, it's also very difficult to play with seconds and minutes in a way. I think that he had the gap, and when he had the gap, he was just making sure that he would maintain that gap, and he did. Superb job in maintaining it. And I think that in the end, if you look at the performance today and you look at the improvements that he has made in Overijs as well, and where he came from in Merckx Plus, today it was flawless in a way. There were not that many mistakes made from his side. I think that the form is definitely there. You could see it, and there was not a single moment that he was in trouble. He was just making sure that the gap stayed enough for him to win, and he did just that. And it's quite early in the season already for him to be in this shape, and it's only good because I think that he is definitely the guy that that gives some color to cyclocross, and I think that everybody loved to see him in this form already.
Yeah, today's ride was truly worth of those world champion stripes on his kit. Well, in a way it kind of reminded me of Mathieu van der Poel, but at the same time it wasn't. We've seen Van der Poel dominate races like this as well. He needs the first lap to overtake some riders, second lap he opens a gap and then he's gone. It didn't turn out to be like that because I don't know if Pidcock was going all out all those laps, or if he was just relatively keeping the gap stable, knowing what he was doing. To me, it looked to be the second. It looked to be that he was in control, wasn't wanting to waste too much energy because, as he said, well, the weather became a lot colder, he felt a bit tired. He knows there's a race tomorrow, he knows there's a long season up ahead. Yeah, why go all out if you can control the gap at 10 seconds and then eventually, yeah, he could still stretch it. Normally, you would see that if Van der Haar and Isebeat were together for a longer period of time, they would have been looking at each other earlier for the overall or for a second place on the podium. That didn't happen, and because that gap between Van der Haar and Isebeat was stable around 3 to 5 seconds the entire race as well, at least until the final 2 laps, you never had this situation where the others behind would start looking at each other and the gap would stretch to half a minute or even a minute. That just didn't happen, and I don't think it was a boring race because all the time there was this voice in the back of your head, ooh, one mistake and the dynamic changes. But at the same time, it also was not as entertaining, and I think that has to do with the fact that we came off Overijse last week. That was an amazing race, close combat racing, and to see these two riders together all the time is way more exciting than this. At least that's how I view the races. I always enjoy that, but maybe others enjoyed this race a lot, and I mean, that's fair. One question that could be asked is potentially, did Lars van der Haar make a mistake in that second lap when Pidcock moved to the front? Van Toerenhout was in the wheel of Pidcock. We know this is not a course for Van Toerenhout. It's way too fast. It was almost a racetrack today. Van der Haar was able to match the lap times after that. Do you think that Van der Haar could have followed Pidcock, or was there just no way?
Well, you might have been able to follow Pidcock, but I think that Pidcock today was just a stronger man, and you would have been able to follow him maybe for half the race or 3/4, and then I think in the later stages of the race, he would struggle a little bit, and Pidcock would just give that little extra because you could see it in the last lap. The gap went from what was it? I think around 12, 13 seconds. To 3 at the finish, so that already that in his last lap, he just made sure that he was going to win. And in my opinion, how I saw him going around the lap, it looked to me like he was holding something back for tomorrow as well. And these double weekends, he doesn't really play in this X2O Trophy, which is a classification on time. For him, it's not really important, the trophy, because he missed the first race and it's not a goal of his. The goal for him is now to just win the races where he participates in, and I think that he did just that today. So, no, I think that for Van der Haar, I think that Pidcock was just a little level ahead of him today and was just a little better.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, but for Van der Haar it must be so frustrating. I mean, another second place. He's been so consistent this season. Only in the very first race of the season in Kruijbeek he missed the podium. He's been on the podium for all the other races, but he only won a few. He won the Trek CX Cup, he won the Nacht van Woerden, 2 races that I don't rate at all, and then he won the mythical Koppenberg Cross. And after the Koppenberg Cross he got 5 second places in a row, a 3rd place in Overijse, and now a 2nd place again. It must be so frustrating that he is so consistent, but every week, on every course, he bumps into another rider that is stronger. Today it's Pidcock. Last week in Overijse, it were Pidcock and Van Toerenhout on courses that suit them. In Merckxplas, it was Zweek who was on a flyer. Beekse Bergen, again Zweek. Niel, again a very strong Zweek. Namur, Van Toerenhout on a perfect course for him. Maasmechelen, Zweek on a flyer. Ruddervoorde, he should have won, had those punctures. It must be so frustrating for him that every week, on every course they come to, there's another rider who is just a tad better than him. I mean, respect to him, it's a very consistent season and he's definitely delivering, but it must be frustrating him.
Well, it definitely must be a little frustrating, but I think that you can also take a lot of positives from this, because I think that Van der Haar is going on a very, very strong season, and I think that he is a guy that understands the level of the sport, and he understands, these guys, Pidcock, tomorrow Van der Poel is going to return, Van Aert is also inside of returning. I think that he understands quite well that it is, it's not always going to be for first and maybe even not for second. But I think that he was also a bit unlucky this season so far with a couple of races. He had a couple of races where he had a bad start. Obviously, what comes up is the punctures that he had, and it definitely didn't really always go his way. And I think that if he had just in a couple of races a little bit more luck, then there would have been one or two more victories added on this season. But I think that overall he's definitely a guy that can deal with these kind of, I wouldn't even call it frustrations, but just displeasure with this, with the situation. But I think that overall, if you look at his season average, it's quite good. So I think that what he did in the summer was was a good thing, and he's definitely still up there, and there are still races coming up, so season is still relatively long.
Yeah, it was one of the questions I had going into this season. Was the previous season of Lars van der Haar a one-time peak towards the end of his career, or had he been able to turn things around and consistently fight for wins again against Iserbyt, Van Toerenhout, and compete for podium places against the bigger names when Van der Poel, Van Aert and Pidcock are there? It seems to be the latter, and I'm super happy for him that he was able to turn things around. It's not a one-time off at the end of his career that he's only one season taking wins and medals and podiums and titles, but it looks to be something that is consistently going to be there. Of course, he's 31. It's not going to be 10 more years in him in his career, but he's definitely still doing his job and doing it in a very professional and good way. And from what I hear in the Baloise Trek team, he is a leader there. He is helping the young guys, and that's definitely something that some of them can use. And I mean, Thibaut Nys, Pim Ronhaar, two of the young guys on that team, they had a very rough race today. Thibaut Nys had a fast start, completely blew up, finished 12th. Pim Ronhaar was like second to last going into the third or fourth corner, and then he needs to fight back to 13th. Both riders are having the troubles which we've gone over many times. It's so hard to, at such an age, find consistency, and to have a leader in your team like Lars van der Haar can help you share experience, give tips and tricks. That's super useful, and from what I hear, he's doing that absolutely fantastic within the team, and he's loved there as well. So very good to see him on top, and today on top in the battle with Iserbyt. Yeah, Iserbyt looked alright again. Last week in Overijse there were already some signs of improvement in the first part of the race. Today it was also pretty good on his end, although some of the comments by his team manager or director sportive, trainer, it's not team manager, director sportive, Mario de Klerk, they were kind of worrying about this situation, and the same goes for what he had to say about it after the race.
Today the situation didn't look that worrying. I mean, he was able to fight for the podium and eventually finished in third. But yeah, I think that he is in a situation right now where he has quite an issue with his back, which hampered him definitely in the last couple of weeks, which was visible. And yeah, it is in a way a worrying situation, and I think the guys around him within the team, they're also a bit worried about what he's going to do and how this will affect the season and maybe even his career. I think that, in my opinion, is maybe a little bit too early to already speculate too much on that. I think that for now, the result today was okay, and I hope for him that it's not a permanent situation or something that he is going to have a lot of trouble with over the course of this season and maybe even the following seasons. But it's difficult. The back is really a very difficult place to have an injury or have difficulties with, I guess, and he has that right now. I don't think that he has the answers, because a result like today kind of shows that he has some issues, but not that much. But then if you look at the previous week, it was definitely visible that he had some issues going around with his body, and there's not only form related but also just a physical issue. And yeah, we have to wait and see what's going to happen in the next coming weeks, I guess.
There's definitely an issue. There's no reason to doubt his injury. So he says he has pain, and indeed, as you say, they don't seem to really know how and what, because from time to time he experiences more pain and on other times he experiences less pain. Running hurts him the most because it's not really his back that hurts him, it's mainly his knee. He can't do cross training throughout the week. The only time he really rides the cross bike is for the races in the weekend, and judging by everything he's just hicking towards the end of the season, and then they want to use the summer to really solve things. And I think that the thing he's doing now is just significant core training to strengthen his back and knee muscles, to make it easier to either bear the pain or just by making it stronger reduce the pain. But Mario de Klerk saying that it could be something permanent is then also again pretty worrying, because if it's something permanent and he keeps experiencing serious pain, it could be a career-defining or career-ending injury. Of course, we don't know if that's the case, so there's no reason at all to speculate about it. But if it were to be something permanent, that's pretty worrying. So hopefully for Iserbyt, it's not something permanent, it's something he can work around. And yeah, we will need to wait and see, because I think that the situation is pretty unholdable. If you keep struggling and don't make significant improvements and it keeps on being up and down, at some point you will have a bad day in the World Cup and lose the position there, and then at some point you will have a bad day in the Super Prestige, or at some point you will have a bad day in the X2O Trophy and lose your lead there. Yeah, and then you take rest, but then it feels like, well, if really the best thing is to do rest, maybe you should just not necessarily call it a season, but take your loss, take your loss, accept that this won't be a season like the previous seasons, try and regroup yourself. And that was another interesting thing that he said in that interview. In the interview, he said that one of the things he learned these past couple of weeks is to keep pushing even when he's in a bad position. Now he admits that he previously did not have the fighter mentality, that when he was knocked down or had a setback, his head went down. We saw it last year, for instance, in the Loenhout race, bad start, or Belgian Championships, bad start, bad first lap, quit the race, or only continue not fighting when he could still easily end on the podium or get a top 5. That was another interesting thing that he says now himself. I did not really keep fighting enough previously. So things we said about it, they were not wrong. He in fact now himself sees it as well, that the people saying that he lacked a bit of fighter mentality were right. Good to see that that's now back, and then let's hope for him that he can keep on going, because today we could see it in the race. He didn't give up. He kept fighting and eventually closed that gap to Lars van der Haar. Let's take a look at the rest of the top 10 then. Tom Pidcock with the win ahead of Lars van der Haar and Elie Iserbyt. Michael van Toerenhout in 4th ahead of another strong performance by Niels van der Putten in 5th. Jens Adams is 6th ahead of Joris Nieuwenhuis, Vincent Baastans and Lander Looks, with the 10th place going to Gerben Kuipers. I think there's a clear standout performance here, that is Niels van der Putten with a 5th place. He put in a very good race, and it's kind of a continuation of last weekend where he was also strong in Merckx+.
Yeah, definitely. And the key of this race from him, apart from obviously having a very good form, was, in my opinion, the start of the race at least, and the first 2-3 laps, where he was, in my opinion, very composed compared to somebody like Thibaut Nys, who was really going with the first guys at the start. And I think that he kind of went just a little bit too fast and kind of lost out in the later part of the race. And I think that Van der Putten was very composed. He knew what his race was going to be, and that definitely helped him. And he's a very talented guy. It's on a course where you have quite the corners, and you can definitely lean more on your technical abilities. And I think that he managed it very well, was able to hold off Adams and Nieuwenhuis in the end as well, which I think he did a very good job to finish in the top 5 with a very strong field today.
Yeah, I have nothing more to add on that performance of him. One thing that's worth noting is the overall. In the overall, Niels van der Putten is now 6th. I forgot to mention that Iserbyt took the lead in the overall. He now has a 4-second lead on Van der Haar. Van Toerenhout lost a minute today and now is 1 minute and 32 seconds down. Jens Adams also put in a strong performance. He ended 6th today and is now 4th in the overall. Good performance by him as well. Field was alright. There were some guys missing, for instance no Laurens Sveek, but yeah, still good to get those results. Nieuwenhuis 7th. Not really a course for him, is it? A bit too fast. Not enough mud. Well, he can move forward. Some valuable UCI points for him. For the rest in the top 10, yeah, maybe. Gerben Kuipers, 10th. He is also putting in a pretty good season. He's been racing in France and the rest of Europe, trying to move into that top 50, which he's done. Took 2 wins in the Coupe de France. I think he's even leading Coupe de France. He won all of the Coupe de France races this year, if I recall correctly, into the first round in Nome. 10th place now, first Belgian top 10 of the season. Good result, isn't it?
Definitely was, and in the first lap it didn't really look like that result was something that he could achieve, but he is definitely behind the scenes somebody that is getting the results in, and he's one of those guys that is not the most known guy in that under 23 field, but he's definitely somebody that went through some development and some growth over the last couple of seasons, and this season especially is quite noticeable with some good results, and also trying it in some races where the level is a little bit lower, but then you still need to make sure that you win, because those races are not like the races you have today, and it's the races like this, it's easier to go on a limit because you are fighting for positions and you're not the guy leading. But when you have to fight for victory, it's a bit different. And if you're already able to do that at this age, I think that he's definitely a guy that is having a bright future if he's able to continue this progression.
Let's go and talk about the women's race then. Zoe Bakset had the best start, but she did not have the best legs today. Lucinda Brandt, who was on the upper hand this week after her hand injury, was having a better period in the first part of the race and attacked. Vos saw the danger and with an impressive attack closed that gap. We had 2 leaders, Vos and Brandt, with Betsema chasing. Betsema closed that gap, and basically when she joined Vos, Brandt got dropped because Brandt went to the pit for a bike change. She was in the 3rd position with Alvarado in her wheel, but Alvarado, well, how did she end up in that position? In the first lap she was going around the outside of her rider, and she was forced into the pits because the rider took a very wide line in the corner before the pit zone. Alvarado needed to overtake a lot of riders and eventually close the gap to the leaders. Brandt didn't, because Brandt, when she was about to rejoin the leaders with Alvarado, clipped behind her saddle and crashed. So the race went on with 3 leaders, Vos, Brandt and Betsema. Betsema wouldn't be Betsema if she wasn't pacing all the time, so she paced for the best part of 75% of the race. When we went into the final lap on a fast course like Kortrijk, all that work done at the head of the race will tire you. Alvarado knew that, she took the lead, Vos reacted and was in 2nd wheel. Alvarado came through with an attack, and thereon Alvarado and Vos dropped Betsema. It went down to a sprint adieu on the bridge of Kortrijk, and it was Marianne Vos, the world champion, who took her first win of the season ahead of Alvarado and Betsema. Issam, the win here by Marianne Vos. The past couple of weeks have been youngsters dominating. They weren't there today, and now we get, well, I don't want to be disrespectful, but Vos is a veteran. That's how long she's been going. I mean, all respect is due there, and today, I don't know, she did what we hoped / expected she was going to do in Merckxplas after that good first lap.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, after the result in Merckxplas, and I guess overall the way she started her season and the season, how far it is going, I would definitely not have expected her here in Kortrijk to be hanging on the wheel of Betsema, just staying in that wheel, making sure that she was getting through the race at the front, and eventually just do what she does best, is position her well and rely on that sprint that she has. And it's, I think for her it's a big up. I mean, Merckxplas was definitely not the greatest of races for her, because she kind of was in the same in a similar position, but just after that first lap it kind of cracked, and she was not really able to get it going. And then we heard the story of maybe she's going to skip World Cup, or at least she's will maybe cut a little bit in the races. And we were, at least I myself was thinking that she still needed a little bit more time to get into the season. And while thinking that she wins in Kortrijk. So I mean, it's a weird situation, but I think very deserved, because she just knew what she had to do. Staying in the wheel of Betsema was pulling the majority of the race, and didn't even ask once to Vos if she wanted to pull, or try to lower the pace a little bit to make sure that maybe someone else was going to take some more initiative. But in the end, Vos did what she does best, and that's win a race in a sprint. And all praises to this world champion, because she's a legend on the bike, and just amazing to see her win again.
I mean, there were some complaints about her sitting in the wheel the entire race, but yeah, it's kind of the Vos tactic. She's going to do it, especially these days. If you flash back all the way towards the early 2010s when she won the Hogerheide Worlds, for instance, she dominated that race from start to finish. But Vos came with a very fitting expression. In Dutch you say, wie niet sterk is, moet slim zijn. It means who isn't strong needs to be smart. We all know that Vos doesn't have the best form at the moment. Maybe the age is setting in, that she's losing a bit of explosiveness, punch in cross. I don't know. Last year it still looked fine, but of course Vos doesn't last forever either. At some point her career, her illustrious career, will come to an end, and maybe the decline is setting in. I'm very careful on speculating about it, because so many times we've already thought, oh yeah, now Vos, her decline is setting in, it's going to be over, end of an era, and then she fought back. It's still possible that she does that, and today there's definitely been the first signs of improvement throughout this season. It had been rough so far. I don't know. I thought, as you said, she would be taking a break. She's taking a break from World Cups, according to the Dutch national coach. Maybe she's thought, well, in these Super Prestige and X2O Trophy races, these young guns don't come. These young guns at the moment are a bit too good for me. I'm going to be the smart one here. I'm going to go to the bit races with a bit smaller and less packed start field, try and get some confidence there, build my form, get some extra start money, which you don't get in the World Cup. And then from there on, try and build further towards the rest of the season. I think that could be a way that Vos is looking at it now, and yeah, I still don't put it past her that she's going to be in peak form in Hogerheide and fighting for that world title, or at least prolonging her world title, in fact.
Yeah, indeed. I think, the season is still quite some races left, and I knew that she was going to be going to some sort of relative form that would be enough for her to fight for podiums and stuff. But, there were definitely some doubts after the first couple of races, and Max Plus for me was really a race where I was like, this is going to be a little bit more difficult. But today it was also really a race from her side on character, I guess, because you could hear the heavy breathing. You could see that she was really giving it her all. But yeah, she was there. She was able to hold the wheels, and then you cannot critique something like that. If there are riders that actually want to pace for the whole race, then you should just you don't need to then ask to them if you want to help them out or something. But if they really want to pull, then you should just accept that present and go with the race and try to win it.
I mean, that is a thing which we'll come to in a bit if we discuss the riders in second and third. Alvarado, after that incident in the start, well, maybe it was a mistake. Personally, I would have not made a move around the outside in the corner before the pits, because you come out of the corner. Here in Kortrijk, you need to get back because you come wider, and if you just go straight, you go into the pits. It's very risky, that can happen in the first lap. If you're right next to a rider, they won't leave the space because they are racing for position. Well, maybe a mistake, but not a costly one in the end. I think Alvarado did what she could do after that, close the gap, and then in the final lap try to attack, because she knew as well as we did that despite Vos being super tired at the end of the race, she is a way faster sprinter than most of the other cross riders. She did what she could, and it's just a continuation of an improvement. And for Betsema, I already kind of said it in my summary, it's not the smartest race by her. And in the end of the race, she also agreed to that in the interview. She did too much work, and if that's going to happen, And you know a rider like Betsma is a rider who paces a lot, and it seems to be her tactic because she lacks explosiveness. So in a way, I get it. Like, I get that her tactic or way of thinking probably is like, wait, I'm not the rider with a punch to drop these riders. I'm not going to wait for a sprint because then I lose. What am I going to do? I'm just going to try and tire them. But it's on a course like Kortrijk that isn't going to be working. So her reasoning for it in the end was that she was thinking about the overall, but I don't believe that. Her coach from Paul Sauze was shouting to her that she should stop working. First he tried to shout to Vos that Vos should take a turn. Betsma didn't ask for a single turn. She was pacing on the road, and the draft effect on this course is pretty significant. Then Betsma said in the interview, well, I was racing for the overall, but I don't believe that because the overall and the X2O Trophy on the women's side is non-existent. Her closest competitor wasn't even here today. Van Empel is second, 4 minutes down. Aniek van Alphen was already 3 minutes down after the Koppenberg. It was just a tactical mistake, and that's what she said in the end. I should have raced smarter. That's at least how I think about it. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on her race and the whole situation around the overall, because pretty shocking, to be honest, that she's already 4 minutes ahead. She's going to win the X2O Trophy by a country mile.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's still Baal and Herentals coming up, you know, 2 tough races. So I think 4 minutes is not enough maybe in her eyes. But no, the classification was you know, kind of done after Koppenberg. And when, you know, Van Empel decided, or, you know, not decided, but, you know, has the priority of racing in the World Cup. It's clear that, you know, the ones that didn't race on the Koppenberg were not there. And then, yeah, that classification is kind of done after that first race. So I don't really understand that clarification from her that she was racing for a classification that kind of already is done and dusted. I mean, I don't think that Betsema, if nothing happens to her, obviously, will lose those 4 minutes to Van Alphen, and Van Empel probably will not race another X2O Trophy. So yeah, it's I don't know. I feel a bit double about it. It's almost like somebody is trying to put a narrative. Well, I think that she should have just, you know, look a little bit more behind and try something, because, you know, we know she doesn't have the abilities of that a Vos and that a Alvarado have to finish a race in the sprint. Her sprint is probably out of the 3 the least, but then you still have to, you know, try something, and that something wasn't there. It was basically just, you know, pacing very hard on a course where it's quite easy to stay in the wheel, or relatively easy, and she just went going and didn't even look behind what's in her wheel. And, you know, also on the last lap, the way that she, you know, they passed her and almost didn't put a fight for lost 2 positions just before a corner that was crucial. And yeah, then just kind of gave up from that point. And, you know, that's normal because she did all that pulling in the race. But I think that just, you know, it's in my opinion, maybe somebody from the staff needs to have a talk with her about that tactic and see if they can try something else. Because, you know, if you keep continuing with these races and try, you know, the competitors are not going to change. So maybe then you should try to change something within tactics or whatever and see what you can do differently, or try something differently and, you know, see what you can do with that.
Betsema's sprint, by the way, isn't terrible, but against these riders it would probably be the worst. And I agree, it's a narrative that's being put forward to be an excuse for a mistake, which she then also owns up to. It's kind of the same as Van Empel. I made a mistake, but blah, 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 blah. So it's probably a bit of that, like, she knows she made a mistake, she admits she made a mistake, but she doesn't fully want to acknowledge it, she doesn't want to look bad, which I can understand. And hey, it's difficult for Betsema. What are you going to do? You don't have the acceleration to drop them, you don't have the acceleration and punch in a sprint, the course lacks a decisive feature, so it's super difficult. But her tactic always seems to be the same, and sometimes it works. Look towards the race in Ruddervoorde, but it doesn't work if you are against some very good riders. So The only thing she could have done is try to surprise them. And then indeed, as you say, you need to like come up with some different tactics. And if your team is telling you stop pacing, you're ruining it, then maybe it's good to listen to that. But I'm sure Betsma, in the end, she was pretty satisfied with that. And now Alvarado is leading the X2O Trophy. Betsma is leading the X2O Trophy. Alvarado is leading the Super Prestige. I think for Betsma it would already be super valuable to win one of those trophies because she is so consistent, but she's never won a championship. She's never won a classification. It's time this season. It's time that she wins one of them. She deserves it based on her consistency. And the X2O Trophy is basically locked in. Herentals, Baal, well, difficult races, whatever. She has 4 minutes. It's going to be easy. Van Empel is not going to be racing Lille and Brussels probably after the Worlds because she's preparing for Strade Bianche. Aniek van Alphen, let's be honest, it's not a match for Denise Betsma, but it does show a different problem, and that has nothing to do with Betsma. That has to do with the X2O Trophy. On the women's side, the X2O Trophy is dead. On the men's side, the X2O Trophy is semi-dead. There's 3 riders. Sveik is skipping this one. The X2O Trophy needs to do better. I mean, if they want to be taken serious as a classification, they need to rebrand or something, because sure, they have the exposure with the Ducks, and that's what I like about the series. It's nice that they are unorthodox with these time classifications, but a time classification, if you want riders to actually take it serious, just look at the depth on the men's side. Lander Looks is in the top 5, Seppe Rombouts is 10th, Pidcock races 1 races and in 9th. They need to rebrand, because like this, there's no depth. Riders don't choose for the series because you start with the Koppenberg, which is the hardest cross on the calendar. Completely ruins everything, and some people say, well, it's just easy to skip the Koppenberg because they would finish more than 5 minutes behind. I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue in the first place is that you are already 5 minutes behind after the Koppenberg. And the gap's already so big that people are just like, well, I'll focus on the Super Prestige or on any other trophy because it's just way easier to roll in there instead of having such a insanely hard first cross, which is extra frightening. And then the rest of the series with the hard cross like Herentals, Baal is also a pretty hard cross. Then you have Koksijde, which is also a very specific cross. It makes it super difficult in the time classification to attract riders.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly how, what you said. I just completely agree with that, because it's almost ridiculous that you start on the Koppenberg and you already have some competitors that bail out of that race and focus on the European Championships, which is always the week after. It's just right now the philosophy that they have is a philosophy that they have for I think 10 years or something. It's just not working, and every year we end up with an X2O Trophy DVV before, which ends up in 5 minutes, and then the other one is 9 minutes, and this guy did only do 6 races out of the 8 or out of the 7. And if you want to have a competition which will attract people, the competition needs to make sense, and at the moment it doesn't really make sense for some of the top competitors, and then it's gonna devaluate a little bit. And I think at the moment that is definitely visible. I mean, only if you look at the starting field today, it was I think that in the end they were quite lucky today in Kortrijk that they had 2 winners and both of them world champion. But if that was not the case, the depth of the field wouldn't have had any meaning in a way. And Baal already we've heard about the big guys not showing up, and that's going to be for the remainder of the season for that competition in particular. So I think that after this season they might have to really look to themselves and be like, we need to make some serious changes, because this competition will eventually, it's not about the money, because there is quite some money to earn. So it's definitely about the competition itself and how they have set up that whole competition during the season. So I hope that they will debrief and look into it and try to change some things left and right.
Yeah, and don't forget, this is the Golazzo classification. Golazzo is super pissed off about Flanders Classics hosting the World Cup and the way they are doing that. But why don't you launch a serious competitor for the World Cup if you are so, not necessarily desperate, but so eager to show your way of doing it? Okay, I can understand there's traditions and you want to stick to Belgium, okay, but why don't you compete with them? You can't compete in terms of dates, but what can you offer to increase the prestige of your series, which the World Cup can't? The answer is very simple. Riders. The World Cup at the moment is not capable of starting in November. Meanwhile, the X2O Trophy, okay, it would require significant changes and some crosses which have been traditionally on certain dates would need to go. Koppenberg maybe shouldn't be included, but if you seriously want to compete, you can't be stuck in traditions. You can't be stuck 15 years back in the time like they are with their graphics. If I look at a cross of 2008, the graphics are the same. The only thing that changes is the color. It's the same old thing with the same old school numbers popping up. Oh, here's the barriers, here's this. It's not fancy at all. Rework that and move your series towards November. Pidcock is starting now. In the Christmas period, you already have so many X2O Trophy races. But Golazzo organizes more races. Shove Lunout in there. Why don't you shove Mol in there? It's in the Exact Cross series. Move some other cross to the Exact Cross series. Maybe don't go for 8 rounds. Go for 6 or 7 rounds. But make sure, because you can offer start money to Pidcock, Van Aert, Van der Poel, which the World Cup can't. Well, the World Cup does it for Van der Poel and Van Aert through the illegal way of paying them extra for road races. But you get the point. If you just pay the Van Aert the 20,000 and Van der Poel the 15,000 to start all those races, then you can seriously have Van der Poel and Van Aert fighting out the overall in this competition. And then you have something which the World Cup can't offer the riders or the viewers. They can't offer the 2 best cross riders, or even 3 if you include Pidcock in all of them, fighting it out for overall. Because by the time they come in the field, the overall is all like, no way you're going to catch Laurens Sweeck, Elisabeth or Lars van der Haar now if you start your cross season just now. That's seriously something they should consider if they want to offer a viable alternative for the World Cup. And if you want to compete, you need to bring the best of the best. Flanders Classics is innovating. They are bringing new graphics, they are bringing onboard cameras, they are bringing drone shots, they are doing completely different things. Well, as I look at the X2O Trophy, it doesn't matter. I open Gazette van Antwerpen Trofee in Lunout 2008. Yeah, okay, the video quality improved, but do I really notice anything different in the broadcast? Until last year, they were still the same commentators, still the same graphics, still the same courses. It's basically stuck 15 years back in the time, and with this Koppenberg cross, you are never going to have an exciting series on time, because now again, sure, you have a couple of riders close after the Koppenberg, but it's really an exception.
Yeah, exactly. I think indeed they just have to really regroup and think about what they want to do, because in my opinion, the World Cup at the moment has the future. It's becoming more and more important for the riders. We can see that the riders are prioritizing it right now already, and I think that's only going to be the tendency for the next coming years. That is the way Flanders Classics wants to go, obviously, because they are organizing it in a way, and I guess that's their philosophy. They want to have that one classification, in my opinion, which is, they still can improve a lot on that as well, with in terms of broadcasting and all that, but let's not go too much into that. But I think just in general, they are on the right path at the moment, in the right direction, heading in the right direction with social media and all that. And the X2O Trophy, in my opinion, like you said, stuck in 15 years back, but it's a big problem, to be honest, especially if they don't realize it. If they keep on going next season with the same things, if I see next season that they didn't change anything, then I feel that it is becoming a bit desperate to for the classification. I think that the only way it's going to end up is a classification that will die out eventually, and we won't have the sponsors to keep going.
Yeah, Flanders Classics is definitely pushing for that one big classification. I don't know what to think. I like that Cross has these different classifications, but on the other hand, if you want to make it accessible for new spectators and organized, one could be easier, like you see in other winter sports like biathlon, alpine skiing or whatever, but it doesn't have to be like that because it's in other sports like that. The World Cup is improving, I agree. Their social media strategy is improving. It's still far from perfect. Like, for instance, the course of Hulst is not on their website yet, or all these small things, but they are developing. Their graphics have improved this year. They are providing more information. They are doing certain things, and I just don't see that progression with the X2O Trophy, and that needs to happen if they want to be a viable alternative, because else you will get that people just choose Super Prestige and World Cup, because World Cup is just, as you say, Flanders Classic thinks it has the future. It is the future. It has all the backing from the UCI. They get dips on the dates. They get dips on the races. And with Flanders Classics, which also organizes the Super Prestige, they are in an extra powerful position because they can always fill up the World Cup with the best races of the Super Prestige. And if it then comes at the cost of the Super Prestige, so be it. Because the World Cup is their paradepaardje, as we say. It's their most precious possession. That's what they care about. That's their big advertisement. And as long as that is working for them, they don't really care that now Gullegem is in the Super Prestige, which is definitely a downgrade compared to Asper-Gavre, or Gavre now. But yeah, rant over, enough. Let's go and talk about some riders that raced cross today, because there were some interesting results. Let's look at the top 10. Vos, Alvarado and Betsema completed the podium. Brandt in 4th, Kant in 5th. Kastelein restarted her season in 6th. 7th place for Anna Kay ahead of Ribeiro, and Van Alphen with the 10th place going to Zoe Baxet, who definitely blew up a bit after that start. Let's briefly talk first about the rider in 4th position, Lucinda Brandt. Issam, what are your thoughts on her race? Because I thought it was pretty good, but that crash that cost her, without that she could have been in contention for the win.
I don't know if she would have been in contention for the win, but because I think that crash in general was just her being on the limit. I think that she was, that definitely the signs are there that she is going to be fighting for podiums quite soon. But just today, it looked good, but it was also on the limit. And I think that, it was just one of those trying to stay in the wheels, just making that small mistake. And, from there on, it was for her quite difficult then to get back, and eventually the gap grew a little bit more and more and more, and then in the end for it was almost impossible to get back to the 3 in front. But I think that if she would have not made that mistake, I think that she would be dropped, or at least be 4th as well, because I don't think maybe she would have snatched the 3rd place from Betsema, but I still think that in the end, in the later laps, it would have been just a little bit too much, and then she, just fell a little bit short for the podium. But I think that for her, it was very promising, this race. And as I already said in the last couple of weeks, it's just looking better and better, and she's getting closer and closer to the women in front.
Yeah, it's looking better and better, but I think that she could have been in contention for the win. I don't think she would have won. Vos was very fast in that final sprint. Alvarado was very good. I don't even know if she could have beaten Betsema, but it's Brandt, If she goes into the final lap, she changes into an animal, an absolute beast. She just goes for it, and that is a very, very good weapon, asset to have in races. If she would have been with Alvarado, which she would have been without that crash, I think she would have gotten onto that leading group. And if you go into the final lap in a leading group, you're always in contention for the win. Would she have won? I don't think so. I think 4th was the maximum achievable in the end, because it didn't look all too great, but there are definitely these improving signs. And I mean, yeah, it's a good result for her. In the end, in the final lap, she took it easy. We'll see more again tomorrow. I don't know. Tomorrow could be difficult with her hand, but, well, we'll see. I think for the rest, the riders behind, 3 riders, Kant, Kastelein and Kay. Kant and Kastelein kind of go into the same category. Correct me if I'm wrong. Riders who've both been struggling this season, and today, yes, maybe in a bit weaker field, get a decent result, which can hopefully boost their confidence.
Yeah, I mean, for Kant, already had quite some races under her belt. For Kastelein, is only her 2nd race, if I'm not mistaken, this season. So, from her side, it's quite understandable. Had that very, quite tough road campaign. So, she's just trying to build back a little bit of that cyclocross feeling. And, for Kant, definitely looked not so bad, but that's with Kant so far this season, a little bit some good races, and then some races that are quite disappointing, and where you're like, what's going on here? But yeah, I guess that's with the age. It's getting more and more difficult for her to get those good results. So it's good to see that she's able to snatch a 5th place there.
I also think that the rider behind her, Jara Kastelein, had a good race. She restarted her season. She had a long road season, and for fun, she raced in Beringen. Had a pretty good race there. Now 6th in her first cross of the season. Definitely not bad. I do think that the priority for Kastelein is shifting more towards the road, and I don't think that's a shame at all. This is the same thing that we've said. I think Twan was especially vocal about this 2 seasons ago. Kastelein had the potential, and then in 2021 she showed that potential in the Tour of Flanders when she then crashed, and I think she broke her back there. That was super unfortunate, but this season her road campaign was again super good. She has the potential, and if she's then going to go for a bit more of a cross approach that we also see with Van der Poel, Van Aert, of starting in November, going towards Worlds, seeing if she can do Worlds or not, that's definitely better. For Kastelein, she's not the level of Van der Poel or Van Aert, so for her it's the question if she's going to be making the selection, because that's going to become increasingly tough for Dutch riders the upcoming years with all the talent coming through. But yeah, definitely a good start to her season, and I look forward to seeing more from her. She will be racing again tomorrow in Hulst, and here is your reminder. The racing in Hulst starts at a very unorthodox time. The women start at 11 a.m. European time, with the men going at 12:15 p.m. European time. Okay, I'm not going to make this too long, Issam, but I think it's already questionable that a Belgian broadcaster gets to decide about a race hosted in the Netherlands because of a Belgian football match, because they're reliant on Belgian spectators. But I think it's even worse that they then just shuffle things around, and the women need to go at 11, and their race isn't even broadcasted on TV because no, there is some religious program on the second channel, and we're showing some football match on the first channel. So no, you need to go to a web stream, which then again isn't available here because I can get Belgian TV on cable, but I can't get it digitally because it's geo-blocked here. Like, why are you going to do all this fuss and tossing it around just to accommodate a live stream of the men's race? Like, who says the men need to go after the women? Do the men at 12 if you want them to not clash with the Belgian match, and put the women at 1, or just accept that something will clash with the Belgian match. I mean, look at other sports. Not every sport is going completely out of their way to avoid clashes, like rely on cross fans watching, or it's just weird. It feels just weird, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just feels wrong to only accommodate the men's race on TV and go all the way to this extent to just do that.
But yeah, it's definitely it feels wrong. I think that it is wrong because it is a very egocentric way of thinking about the sport and about the broadcasting. I personally think that they forgot a little bit about the programming in general, which is, again, that sounds even more stupid if that actually is the truth. But I think that they just are at this point that they think that they can get away with it, and actually get away with it, because it's kind of accepted already. There is not a lot of fuzz about it, and that is kind of one of those points that I don't look at and be like, the World Cup really wants to be this one classification, wants to be this classification that's that has some sort of base where you can count on, that you have the races at 3 and you have the races at 145 or 140, and but then when you actually look at it, it's always a bit different. The times change sometimes. The parcours of the map of the course are on the websites very inconsistent. Sometimes a week before, sometimes a month, sometimes not even on the website, and it's just these kind of things make it a little bit more unprofessional, and I have the feeling that this is also quite an unprofessional decision to make. I think that in the Netherlands you can watch it on Eurosport, but still, yeah, it's not. I think it's not the right way to do it, but yeah, it's already decided, so there's not much you can do about it now.
Yeah, we'll also be on the web stream of the Dutch public broadcaster. They bring all their races, at least most of them, on the web stream. Namurs, or usually around the Christmas period, you get some live on TV, but it's usually put on web stream due to other sports, speed skating, super popular in the Netherlands. And okay, I can understand like the perspective of we need to get out of our way for the World Cup. People are going to be watching that. We're going to lose viewers, like broadcast numbers are going to be down, and that's a bad look. But it's also super confusing. You remember the big talk about, oh yeah, every Sunday you need to tune in at 3 p.m. and you will see the Men's World Cup. If you tune in at 1:30, you will see the Women's World Cup. That's completely gone now. I mean, Val di Sole is on a Saturday. The World Cup hours are changed, like Antwerpen was changed 2 weeks before the event. Like this week we got notice that they moved that race 1 hour ahead. We are attending. Well, luckily for us it doesn't matter. We'll be there, but you get what I'm saying? And then Val di Sole is then also 30 minutes earlier, and people are going to be pretty confused. Like I've already seen so many people unaware of the changed starting times in Hulst. Like it's a bit messy. So on one hand, okay, I understand you want to avoid a clash with a bigger event. On the other hand, maybe just accept that for a few weeks your figures will be down a little bit, but rely on the true cross pace to turn out and look at the racing, maybe. And at least not like change it around and then be like, oh wait, now the women's race is not on TV at all. Like, make it make sense for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it is what it is. They've made the decision to go on this path, and I can understand with an event like the World Cup. Football is, it's a big event, big magnitude. It attracts a lot of attention, but I just feel that they could have handled this a little bit different, and I almost feel like it was a rushed decision, or a decision that was just very impulsive, not really thought through. And then like this week or maybe 2 weeks ago, they were like, oh, we cannot really, we cannot broadcast it on the TV, and we have to stream it, and because we cannot break the broadcast of for the Sunday the church or whatever is broadcasted at that moment. But yeah, in my opinion, it's just one of those things that cyclocross has, that that form of not really being professional in a way. And I hope that in the next coming years we will see a more professional sport, but it will come with time, I guess.
It's hopefully something that we get rid of in general, that the power of Belgium in cross needs to be reduced. There need to be less races in Belgium. There needs to be a significant rebuild of the cross base outside of Belgium, and then you will also already avoid these clashes being only focused around the match of Belgium. I mean, there will also be cyclocross fans probably in the match of 11 o'clock, which now clashes with the women's race. I don't exactly know which team is playing then, but I think it's I don't know. Doesn't matter. Like, there will always be clashes, and hopefully the sport can expand. And sure, you can't turn your back on Belgium. It's the base of cross. It's the home of cross. Cross is in Belgium is like cross in no other country. But if you could like actually continue with globalizing the sport, hopefully it's not a Belgian broadcaster that decides about a Dutch event. Like, maybe the Dutch broadcasters would have put it on TV if they would have raced at 4 o'clock, but you're not going to do that every week just because it's more convenient for the host country. So, well, we'll see tomorrow. Early wake up then, especially if you're not in Europe to watch the racing. Have this out of the way. 2 long rants, Issam. Let's end on a positive note. Any rider that you still want to put some shine on that you thought, oh yeah, good performance today?
Nah, I think that that I can definitely mention Anna Kay. I think that for her it was a positive result today. It was she was able to run in the mix, get a solid top 10, and it has been for her. I don't know, bit on and off, but overall kind of in her position. But I think that this 7th place was definitely not a bad result, and she was able to fight for those positions quite well. So I think that's that was definitely good to see.
Alright then, let's still take a brief look at some racing in the rest of Europe. There was racing in Italy in Val Fontabuona. And the men's race was won by Federico Seolin ahead of Marco Pavan and Nicolas Samparisi. The women's race saw the return to cross of the bronze medalist at the most recent World Championship, Silvia Persico. She took the win almost 2 minutes ahead right away of Asia Zontone, and Carlotta Borello ended third. Then there was racing in France in Guernel. It was Marcel Meisen who took the win there ahead of Joshua Dubois and Sander de Vet. On the women's side, we saw Lynn Burquier taking the win, just 15-ish seconds ahead of Magali Rochette. She's back in Europe, starting to build up in some smaller races before she aims to be back in the World Cup in Val di Sol. The podium there was completed by Laurine Durafou. Issam, thank you once again for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me, and good luck tomorrow.
And don't be too negative about the changed starting hours, because now you can at least watch the Morocco game, not because you support Belgium, but because you support Morocco.
I'm not negative whatsoever, but yeah, just for the bigger picture, I'm a bit negative. But overall, I'm very happy to watch the football match.
Yeah, and lucky for you, you don't need to record the podcast right away after. Twan is going to be back on the podcast tomorrow. We'll be discussing the World Cup in Hulst then. So don't forget the early starting hour, 11 and 12:15. See you guys then for the recap. Goodbye.